To show off a project that I've been working on for about a month, which is the Palace of Versailles and the surrounding park. I started it a few weeks ago. I'm very pleased with the progress that I've made so far, and yeah, I'm moving right along. So, the Palace of Versailles is a very large complex that is near the city of Versailles, just outside of Paris. Now, I still have a lot of outbuildings to build, including the Grand Commune, the stables, the carriage house, and then the city of Versailles. Uh, for the city itself, I'm going to probably do some generic buildings, maybe one or two iconic things. There is an interesting looking church there in the city of Versailles, but my main focus is on the palace. Now, the palace was originally a chateau, a hunting chateau built by Louis XIII, and that actually still exists here in the center of the palace around the marble courtyard. Louis XIV, his son, once he became king and came of age, wanted to expand the chateau and really create a center for noble life in France. Over time, he had to expand it more and more as his family grew and as more nobles came to be concentrated at Versailles. Here on a map of my world, you can see where I've been working on Versailles. You can see some other buildings like Buckingham Palace, the Catherine Palace. I have St. Peter's Basilica up there in the corner, and also a smaller version of Versailles with my own design for a palace that I had done years ago. And you can see how the Grand Canal, the cross-shaped body of water there, it was much smaller in that version than the one-to-one version that I'm building now, that you can see here on the map. Lately, I've been working on the bosquets, which are around the gardens. This is the garden-facing facade of the palace, going out amongst the water parterre. We have the Parterre du Midi over here, and the Orangerie is just beyond. I haven't built that yet. I will work on that soon. And there are a couple of empty bosquets here that I still have to fill in. I counted 14 bosquets, of which I have completed 9 so far. And here you can see a couple of other parterres. I actually increased the height of moss carpet to act as a low-lying hedge for the parterres, and I really like the way that it turned out. Going further, we have the tapis vert, which is a 350-meter long lawn that extends down towards the Fountain of Apollo, which is just before the Grand Canal. Dotted along the side, we have different statues and urns. The statues are actually armor stands with netherite armor, which in my texture pack I have looking like marble statues. The urns are actually powdered snow-filled cauldrons, which I adjusted the model of. Okay. Now I'm still working on the fountains. I want to have some water features. I'll play around with a few different options. And I'm also going to have some armor stands in different poses to symbolize the different sculptures that are part of some of the fountains. I'll probably do those all wholesale at the same time. Here we have one end of the Grand Canal. I haven't filled in the whole thing with water yet. I'll do that probably when I go and plant the trees around the park. Fortunately, the trees around the Grand Canal, uh, even though there are tree-lined avenues like this one, a lot of the other trees are not as structured as the bosquets up here in the gardens. Now, a bosquet is a grove of trees planted in a specific pattern, usually with open spaces inside. I tried to model these bosquets off of the real life ones at Versailles. I've never been there, but I've been using Google Street View imaging and just good old Google images. from other people that have been there. Each of the bosquets has its own unique areas inside. And of course, we have the nice sandy pathways with hedges lining them. I really do like the way that some of these turned out. They feel like nice areas where you could, if you were a French noble, go for a walk, find a nice quiet area. They're all separated by these nice wide alleys with fountains at the crossroads. I did have to take a few artistic liberties with some of the designs. I definitely will have to for the Grand Trianon, which is on a slight angle compared to the main palace. I'm going to have to straighten that out. And then there are other smaller things, like here, this is the Bosquet d'Obélisque, but I believe that the obelisk is actually a water feature that shoots up. I just wanted to have a nice marble obelisk here in the center, so I went ahead and did that. This next Bosquet is actually one of my favorites. It's the Bosquet de l'Etoile, which is just a big old pentagon, which was fun to work on. I don't often do pentagons in Minecraft, and I had to figure out the angles of the sides. It's just a nice grassy field inside. It seems very peaceful. You have wildflowers and grass. This is one of the next bosquets that I'm going to work on, the Théâtre de. I'm going to have to figure out water features for that too. And then beyond, we have the Bosquet de Trois Fontaines. Yes, this is one of the smaller ones. And it was an opportunity to try to make a garden feature that was a little bit more cozy, a little bit tighter. And what I found interesting about the real life version of this was that it had these different terraced levels. Of course, some of my custom textures are here. This is cobbled deep slate. It looks like a nice light gray marble. We have Rouge d'Arance there. That's another texture that I imported for this project. There is a lot of Rouge d'Arance at Versailles. Here we have the Parterre du Nord. And now we'll take a look at a little bit of the palace itself. I still have a lot of the north wing to finish, including the whole of the opera house, but the chapel I've finished. I do like the way that the gilding on the roof turned out. Not entirely convinced about the ceiling design. I think I might change that in the future, but I do like the way that the floor came out. That's glazed terracotta using the same Rouge d'Arance texture. We have the organ back there. Off of the honor court, we have here actually a staircase that was completed 200 years after the end of the Ancien Regime in France. It's a grand staircase that I tried to make look as close to reality as possible. And then from there, we go to the suite of staterooms for the king. This is the Salon of Hercules. I'm also not convinced on the ceiling in this room, but I do like the way that the floor and the walls turned out. More of the Rouge d'Arance here for the columns. And we have the paintings, classic paintings that I've imported for the texture pack at a higher resolution than the rest of the texture pack, just to get a bit more of that detail in the paintings. This is the guard chamber for the king's state apartments. And that's just what it sounded like. It's where guards would stand to protect against any assassins gaining entry to the king's state apartments. This is the Salon of Diana, which unfortunately I don't have a painting of Diana in here because it's on a 3x3 and I couldn't find a good way to center it. But I do have the same painting over here in the Salon of Mars. See, there it is right there. This room at one point was a bedroom. I just have it decorated as a throne room because the throne can be centered in here. But really, when there was a throne room being used in these state apartments, it was the next room right over, which I just have some nice stools in. And then from here, it goes into the Salon of War, which I haven't done yet, which, along with the Salon of Peace, borders the Hall of Mirrors. That I'm going to save to the very end of the palace. I'm kind of going to treat it as a treat to myself for finishing the rest of the palace. And then here we have the Queen's bedroom. This is the suite of Queen's state apartments. And I like the way that the ceiling came out in here. I'm not entirely convinced on the walls, but I can always change that at a future date. I like the way that the wallpaper came out in this salon. And see, part of Versailles was the royals would put on a show, in essence, multiple times a week for nobles. They would sit, just the two of them, or just the king, or what have you, eating, being watched by the nobles. They would be dressed by the nobles. This was developed as a power play by Louis XIV for nobles to serve him and also compete to try to get close to him. Uh, it was something that developed through the reigns of Louis XV and Louis XVI. And the center body of the palace is mostly composed of these state apartments, which mostly were for this show that would be put on. It's just for the king and queen, well, on this level at least. This is the queen's staircase, done in a Baroque style. And then through this vestibule, we get to the guard chamber for the king's apartments, opposed to the king's state apartments or even the king's private apartments. There's an antechamber. And see, these were for a bit more business. This is the Salon of the Bull's Eye. And this is one of the rooms where the king would meet with advisors. It's off of the Hall of Mirrors. Through here is the king's state bedroom. And I do like the way that the wall coverings came out here. I like how nice and high the ceilings are. And this room is actually centered on the marble court and centered in the original part of the chateau built by Louis XIII, though of course it looked different inside at the time. And through here we have another room where the king would meet with advisors, secretaries, business, and then the king's private apartments, a private bedroom for the king, a place that wasn't as public as the state bedroom. And these apartments were smaller than the staterooms. They were less fancy. It's been hard to find pictures or even consistent plans about them because they changed from reign to reign. But the basic idea is that you would have library, study, private dining room, private bedroom, places where the king wouldn't be in such a public facing area like the state apartments. And here we have the king's staircase, which I believe in real life, this staircase is centered, not off to the side like I've done. but this actually had replaced an earlier staircase called the Ambassador's Staircase. And I thought about building that, but ultimately decided just to take a bit of artistic license. Going back out into the honor court, see the front facade again. A lot of the south wing just has plain apartment rooms, uh, but I did make sure to include the Galerie de Batel, which actually replaced several apartments, including, I believe, one of the Dauphin apartments. This was in the 19th century. They replaced it with this long gallery lined with artworks depicting the military history of France. The room is actually based off of a similar room at the Louvre, and I feel like it's such an iconic part of Versailles, I couldn't not include it. So that's most of what I've done so far. Like I had said, I'm pleased with the progress that I've made. If you want to give me some feedback, please do. I'm always working on this. Thank you for watching this video, and feel free to watch some of my other videos where I've shown some of the other builds that I've done within the same world, which I have a download for in the description. Thank you for watching, and have a great afternoon. Thanks. Bye.